I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, September 11th. Anti-Semitism is manifested by a lack of outrage in response. But first, let me say that many Americans and freedom-loving people around the world, well, today we remember, even though we never do forget, the tragedy of 9/11, 2001, some 18 years ago. And the tropes on the internet still circulate and exist that somehow the Jewish people or Israel was behind it. That said, most people do see the reality that indeed the situation was the result of Islamic extremists acting on the tenets of their faith and their own radicalization. They attacked America, which symbolically attacks Christians, Jews, and any non-Muslim, and a free capitalist society. This was manifested by the attacks in New York, a financial hub in the Western world, and D.C., a political and cultural hub in the Western world. And yet, the violence in New York is not really gone away. In this age of see something, say something. It is just tucked away in the corners of the community with no desire by hypnotized press to shine a light. 2 weeks ago, a rabbi from Jerusalem was walking in Brooklyn and he was attacked and bloodied by a man using a brick. While this event did not get any media attention in my neck of the woods here in D.C., I'm hoping it at least got some local coverage. I found the story in two places, CBN, the Christian Broadcast Network, and the Israeli Times. New York City Councilman Chaim Deutsch tweeted that the New York Police Department Hate Crimes Division is actively investigating the incident. Deutsch goes on to ask publicly, has it become too dangerous for openly religious Jewish men to walk in the streets of New York City? Mayor Bill de Blasio called the attack despicable and vowed to catch the perpetrator. Why is it that Jews can have warnings issued to them about the dangers, legitimate dangers, of their walking through various cities in New York, Berlin, and other parts of Europe, and even in some communities in the greater boundaries of Israel? Benny Friedman, the son-in-law of the rabbi who was attacked in Brooklyn, noted that the attacks on Jews in Brooklyn are so common they're not actually making the news. The Anti-Defamation League released statistics showing that anti-Semitic acts in the U.S. have doubled in 2018, and the problem of anti-Semitism and its attacks is especially prominent in New York City. As well, in this week, not on the major news networks, in Finland there was an attack on a Jewish man walking through a village. The president of the Passaic, New Jersey chapter of the NAACP, Jeffrey Dye, said to a reporter of the New Jersey Globe, a reporter named David Wildstein, who was conducting a phone interview with Jeffrey Dye, quote, "I don't talk to effing Jews. Get the F out of here." I cleaned it up for you. Now, think about any person saying this sentence and inserting another religious, cultural, or racial group. What about someone saying, I don't talk to effing blacks? I don't talk to effing women. I don't talk to effing gays. That would be front page news. And the Democrats and Republicans, hopefully, would be running to the aids of oppressed and offended people. Where's Tlaib? Where's AOC? Where's the rest who claim that bigotry and racism is running amongst in our current administration? In an uber-liberal Go Green county of Marin County, California, the Green Platform congressional candidate in 2016, Erin Schroed, was met with the most horrible anti-Semitic pushback on her social media and from her cell phone. Rather than debating her platform ideas, they actually went after her with the most horrible responses, photographs, insults, words I can't even start to describe or repeat to you, but just think about the kinds of things you've seen in Nazi propaganda in your history books. Those things were texted to her, tweeted to her, and phoned into her voicemail. In a county where it is so liberal and progressive and go green that they want to rename manholes to something else because it is a gender-biased term. Schroed is pro-Israel, and that trumped her entire campaign's platform. Not to mention the fact that Israel is probably one of the most conservation-minded nations on the face of the earth. Where was OC, Miss Green Deal herself, to defend her sister running for Congress on the other side of the country? And then there's HBO. They're peddling a new 10-part quote-unquote documentary called Our Boys that was initially advertised or push that it was going to be a documentary about the 2014 tragic kidnapping and killing of 4 yeshiva teenagers in Israel. Now keep in mind, 3 days after the discovery of this horrible terrorist occurrence, there was a murder of Muhammad Abu Qadir, a teenager, an innocent victim, in a revenge killing by 3 crazed Jews, a murder that horrified the entire nation of Israel, and those 3 Jews were prosecuted to the greatest extent of the law. This was horrible, and Israelis empathized and came to the aid of the family of these victims. It was a terrible thing, and the response by Israelis to Muhammad's death is the complete opposite to the response of the kidnapping and killing of the 3 yeshiva teens, because the Arab government, the Palestinian government, to this day still celebrates that event. So the real meaning of Our Boys doesn't refer to the 3 Israeli victims, which viewers hardly get to know at all because the documentary starts after their deaths. They didn't learn anything about the killers of these 3 boys. In this documentary, the villains are the crazed Israelis who murdered Muhammad and his settler accomplices. And those everybody in Israel vowed to never forget. These perpetrators, like I said, were despicable and rare. You don't often, if at all, hear about Jewish people attacking randomly Palestinian people and murdering them, though it is a common occurrence in the other direction. Our Boys is a 10-part series that manages to turn a Jewish tragedy into a commendation of Israeli society. Woe to those who fail to see the hypocrisy of those responsible for this despicable misrepresentation of the truth. These final words were from Rabbi Benjamin Blech, who is the cousin of one of the victims, and he shared his entire story on Ashish.com. Rabbi Benjamin is a professor of Talmud at Yeshiva University and an international recognized educator, religious leader, and lecturer, and he's published 19 books. Rabbi Benjamin Blech, B-L-E-C-H. Please look him up. Now, back to Israel. Did you know that in the greater boundaries of Israel today, there are signs posted outside predominantly Arab towns warning Jews that it may be dangerous for them to visit that community? And yet, an Arab-Israeli woman had a unique experiment posted on Facebook about 2 weeks ago. She showed and translated the signage outside the Arab towns and wondered aloud what would be like for an Arab woman to go to a Jewish town. And so she did. Armed with her hidden camera and in her traditional Muslim dress, she approached men and women asking for directions, services at stores, help with her car. Everyone was kind and accommodating, and when she asked one gentleman if he would be angry to know that he was on camera after he stopped to help her restart her car, he laughed and put his arm around her in a side hug and had a big smile. She went up to one shop owner and asked him specifically, "Do you sell to Arabs or only to Jews?" And the Jewish shop owner said, "We sell to everybody." And then he took her to the toy section and spent time with her going through the toys to find an appropriate gift for her nephew, which she said she needed. She went up to another shop owner and said, "May I please use your cell phone to call a relative? I forgot mine." The shop owner said yes and gave her his phone. She made the call, and then she gave the phone back to the man and said, "If a man with an Arabic accent calls you back on this number, because I dialed from it, just to let him know that all is well and I am fine." The store owner said, "Yes, of course, no problem," with a big smile. How neighborly was her experience in that community? And yet Israel and the Jewish people in Israel get the brunt of international accusations of being bullies, and they are the target of outright lies about being an apartheid state, racist, somehow supremacist, and genocidal. You name the violation, Israelis have been accused of it. But these accusations are not the only problem. The amount of the world and public that actually believes it is the problem. And when you visit the nation of Israel, it reveals the very opposite side of the vitriol that is hurled at her. Kudos to the Arab-Israeli woman who put this video up. I'm sure it was at great peril to her personal safety. And we support Israel and all those who support Israel's right to exist on its merits in both modern law and historical records, as well as biblical evidence. We sometimes find the oddest allies. Bill Maher, a famous TV personality who has a show on HBO, publicly went after BDS a couple weeks ago. How rare it is that I agree with Bill Maher on just about anything. He had a panel of 4 celebrities on his HBO talk show, and he posited a question about BDS, to which none of his guests would dare answer. So he said, "I'll answer it myself." And this is a quote. And BDS is a bull purity test by which people want to appear woke but actually slept through history class. It's predicated on this notion. I think it's very shallow thinking. The Jews in Israel are mostly white and Palestinians are browner, so they must be innocent and correct and the Jews must be wrong. He goes on to say, as if the occupation came right out of the blue. This is completely peaceful people found themselves suddenly occupied. Forget about the intifadas and the suicide bombings, the rockets, and the many wars. Let me read Omar Barghouti, one of the co-founders of the BDS movement's actual quote. No rational Palestinian would ever accept a Jewish state in Palestine. So, Maher goes on to say, that's where this whole thing comes from, this movement, that someone who doesn't even want a Jewish state at all. Somehow, this side of the origination of the BDS movement is never presented in American media. This is very odd. This is from Bill Maher. Of course, Omar and Tlaib shouted back on Twitter, to which Bill noted some more history, as recent though it may be. Tlaib went on to say that everybody should boycott Maher's show. And Maher responded, some people have only one move. Boycott, cancel, make it go away. But here's the thing. The House voted 318-17 to condemn BDS as a movement, including 93% of the Democrats. Does Tlaib want to boycott 93% of her own party? That was a good point for him to make. And remember, in July, 89% of Democrats voted for an anti-BDS resolution that was brought forth to the House of Representatives. Now I'm wondering if Mr. Bill Maher will comment at all on his network's new series, Our Boys. I really would like to hear his thoughts on that. My point here this week with my report is that anti-Semitism can sometimes manifest in the lack of coverage and outrage for things that are happening against the Jewish people and the state of Israel, which are indeed intimately connected. Shavua Tov. Have a great week.